Question 1. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a comprehensive insider threat monitoring program is a strategic imperative. Given the regulatory landscape in the United States, which approach to monitoring user activity and data access best balances security needs with employee privacy and legal compliance? Option A. Relying solely on post-incident forensic investigations after a confirmed data breach has occurred to identify the source of the compromise. Option B. Implementing continuous real-time surveillance of all employee communications, including emails, instant messages, and web browsing history, regardless of work-relatedness, without explicit prior notification. Option C. Deploying user behavior analytics, UBA, tools to detect anomalous activity patterns and deviations from established baselines, coupled with robust access logging and regular policy reviews, while ensuring clear communication of monitoring policies to employees. Option D. Focusing exclusively on monitoring external network traffic for suspicious inbound and outbound connections, assuming internal threats are less likely or manageable through other means. Correct answer is C. Deploying user behavior analytics, UBA, tools to detect anomalous activity patterns and deviations from established baselines, coupled with robust access logging and regular policy reviews, while ensuring clear communication of monitoring policies to employees. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the imperative of robust insider threat monitoring with the practical constraints of resource allocation and the potential for employee privacy concerns. The organization must implement effective controls without unduly infringing on employee rights or creating an environment of distrust, all while adhering to relevant U.S. regulations. Careful judgment is required to select monitoring strategies that are both effective and legally compliant. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a layered defense that leverages technical controls and policy enforcement, aligning with U.S. regulatory expectations for data protection and incident response. Specifically, it focuses on monitoring for anomalous behavior indicative of malicious intent or negligence, which is a key component of a comprehensive insider threat program. This approach is supported by frameworks like NIST SB 800-53, which emphasizes the need for monitoring user activity and implementing access controls to mitigate insider threats. By focusing on user behavior analytics and access logging, the organization can detect potential threats early while maintaining a degree of privacy by focusing on deviations from normal, authorized activity rather than constant surveillance of all communications. This proactive stance is crucial for meeting the due diligence expected under regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data or SOX for financial data, where insider threats can lead to significant breaches. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on extensive surveillance of all employee communications, including personal messages and non-work-related activities, is professionally unacceptable. This approach raises significant privacy concerns and could violate employee rights under various U.S. privacy laws, such as the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, ECPA, depending on the context and how data is collected and used. Such broad surveillance can also lead to a chilling effect on employee morale and productivity, and may generate an overwhelming volume of data that is difficult to analyze effectively, leading to missed actual threats. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on reactive measures, such as investigating only after a confirmed data breach, is also professionally unacceptable. This fails to meet the proactive monitoring requirements often implied or explicitly stated in regulatory frameworks. Waiting for a breach to occur means the organization has already suffered damage, potentially leading to regulatory penalties, reputational harm, and financial losses. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence in preventing incidents. A third incorrect approach that involves implementing monitoring tools without clear policies and employee notification is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to legal challenges related to consent and privacy. Employees must be informed about what is being monitored and why, as outlined in company policies and potentially in employment agreements. Transparency is key to maintaining trust and ensuring legal compliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. This includes identifying critical assets and data, understanding potential insider threat vectors, and evaluating the effectiveness and cost of various monitoring solutions. It requires consulting legal counsel to ensure compliance with all applicable U.S. privacy and data protection laws. Furthermore, developing clear, well-communicated policies that define acceptable use and the scope of monitoring is essential. Finally, continuous evaluation and refinement of the Insider Threat Program, based on evolving threats and technological capabilities, are critical for sustained effectiveness. Question 2. The investigation demonstrates a sophisticated ransomware attack that has encrypted critical financial systems. The incident response team has identified the primary malware variant and confirmed its presence across multiple servers. The business is demanding immediate restoration of services to minimize financial losses. Which of the following actions best balances the need for rapid recovery with regulatory compliance and the prevention of further compromise? Option A. Isolate all affected systems from the network, then proceed directly to restoring systems from backups without performing any post-restoration scans or integrity checks, as speed is paramount. Option B. Attempt to use available decryption tools provided by the ransomware group or third-party researchers to unlock the encrypted files, prioritizing the restoration of the most critical customer-facing applications first. Option C. Engage directly with the ransomware operators to negotiate a ransom payment, with the understanding that payment will expedite the decryption process and allow for a faster return to normal operations. Option D. Immediately initiate system restoration from the most recent verified clean backups, followed by comprehensive malware scanning and vulnerability assessments of the restored environment before bringing systems back online. The correct answer is D. Immediately initiate system restoration from the most recent verified clean backups, followed by comprehensive malware scanning and vulnerability assessments of the restored environment before bringing systems back online. Explanation: the investigation demonstrates a sophisticated ransomware attack that has encrypted critical financial systems. The primary challenge lies in balancing the urgent need to restore operations with the imperative to avoid further damage or data loss, all while adhering to strict regulatory requirements for incident response. The organization must make rapid, informed decisions under pressure. The correct approach involves a phased containment, eradication, and recovery strategy that prioritizes data integrity and regulatory compliance. This begins with isolating affected systems to prevent lateral movement of the malware, followed by a thorough eradication of the threat. Recovery then proceeds from known good backups, with rigorous validation to ensure no residual compromise. This methodical approach aligns with best practices for incident handling, aiming to minimize business impact and restore trust. From a U.S. regulatory perspective, this aligns with the principles of NIST SB 800-61 Rev. 2, which emphasizes a structured incident response lifecycle. Furthermore, depending on the specific financial data involved, regulations like the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, or the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, mandate timely and effective incident response to protect sensitive customer information and maintain operational resilience. An incorrect approach that involves immediately attempting to decrypt systems without confirming eradication would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to reinfection, further data corruption, and a failure to meet the reasonable security measures required by regulations like GLBA, potentially resulting in substantial fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, such as paying the ransom without a clear understanding of the decryption capabilities or the threat actor's trustworthiness, poses its own set of risks. This not only fails to guarantee data recovery, but also potentially funds criminal enterprises, which can have legal and ethical ramifications. Furthermore, it bypasses the critical step of eradicating the root cause, leaving the organization vulnerable to future attacks. A third incorrect approach, such as restoring systems without verifying the integrity of backups or performing thorough post-recovery scans, risks reintroducing the malware or leaving backdoors open, violating the duty to protect sensitive data and maintain system security as mandated by various U.S. financial regulations. Professional decision-making in such scenarios requires a clear understanding of the incident response plan, established communication channels with legal and executive leadership, and a commitment to a systematic, evidence-based approach. It involves assessing the threat, understanding the potential impact, and selecting containment and recovery strategies that are both effective and compliant with applicable regulations. Question 3. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of a sophisticated nation-state actor, apt, attempting to exfiltrate sensitive intellectual property from the organization's research and development network. Initial indicators suggest the APT is employing novel evasion techniques not yet widely documented. As the lead incident handler, you have a narrow window to contain the threat before significant data loss occurs. However, your forensic team has identified that the most effective containment strategy would involve isolating and re-imaging affected systems, which would overwrite critical forensic data that could reveal the full scope of the APT's TTPs and their access points. What is the most appropriate course of action, balancing immediate containment with the need for thorough investigation and regulatory compliance under U.S. frameworks? Option A. Implement a containment strategy that prioritizes evidence preservation by segmenting the affected network and deploying advanced monitoring tools to track the APT's movements and TTPs in real time, while initiating a parallel forensic investigation to reconstruct the attack timeline and identify all compromised systems, and immediately notifying CISA as per regulatory requirements. Option B. Halt all containment efforts until a complete forensic image of all affected systems can be acquired, even if it means allowing the APT to continue exfiltrating data, and then report the incident to CISA. Option C. Immediately isolate and re-image all potentially affected systems to prevent further exfiltration, accepting the loss of some forensic data, and then conduct a post-incident analysis to infer the APT's TTPs based on available logs and network traffic. Option D. Share the preliminary findings about the APT's novel evasion techniques with industry peers and cybersecurity forums to solicit immediate advice on containment, bypassing formal reporting channels to CISA for now. The correct answer is A. Implement a containment strategy that prioritizes evidence preservation by segmenting the affected network and deploying advanced monitoring tools to track the APT's movements and TTPs in real time, while initiating a parallel forensic investigation to reconstruct the attack timeline and identify all compromised systems, and immediately notifying CISA as per regulatory requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a significant ethical and professional challenge for an incident handler. The core dilemma lies in balancing the immediate need to contain a sophisticated threat, potentially involving nation-state actors, APT characteristics, with the legal and ethical obligations to preserve evidence and adhere to established incident response protocols. The pressure to act quickly against a persistent and advanced adversary can lead to shortcuts that compromise forensic integrity or violate reporting requirements. Potential for significant national security implications, as suggested by the APT classification, adds another layer of complexity, demanding a measured yet decisive response. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a structured, evidence-preserving incident response that aligns with established best practices and regulatory frameworks. This involves meticulous documentation, containment strategies that minimize data loss or alteration, and timely, accurate reporting to relevant authorities as mandated by U.S. federal regulations concerning critical infrastructure and cybersecurity incidents. The focus on understanding the APT's TTPs is crucial for effective containment and eradication, but it must be done without sacrificing the integrity of the investigation. This approach upholds the principles of due diligence, accountability, and legal compliance, ensuring that the incident response is both effective and defensible. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that focuses solely on immediate eradication without proper evidence preservation would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could violate requirements under laws like the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2015 or NIST guidelines, which emphasize the importance of forensic readiness and evidence integrity for potential legal proceedings or future threat intelligence. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the long-term implications of an incident and the need for a comprehensive investigation. An approach that delays reporting to internal stakeholders or external regulatory bodies due to uncertainty about the full scope or impact of the APT activity is also problematic. Regulations such as those from CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, often have specific timeframes for reporting certain types of incidents. Failing to report promptly can lead to penalties and hinder coordinated defense efforts. It also shows a lack of proactive risk management and communication, an approach that involves sharing sensitive, unverified intelligence about the APT's TTPs with external parties prematurely, without proper vetting or adherence to information sharing protocols, poses significant risks. This could violate confidentiality agreements, compromise ongoing investigations, or even inadvertently aid the adversary. It demonstrates a disregard for established operational security and information governance. Professional reasoning. Incident handlers must adopt a decision-making framework that integrates technical expertise with a strong understanding of legal and ethical obligations. This framework should include 1. Threat assessment and prioritization. Understand the nature of the threat, including APT characteristics and TTPs, to inform response strategy. 2. Protocol adherence. Strictly follow established incident response plans and organizational policies. 3. Evidence preservation. Implement containment and eradication measures that minimize impact on forensic evidence. 4. Documentation. Maintain detailed and accurate records of all actions taken, observations, and decisions. 5. Communication and reporting. Ensure timely and appropriate communication with internal stakeholders and external regulatory bodies as required by law. 6. Continuous learning. Stay updated on evolving APT TTPs and relevant regulatory landscapes. Question 4. Assessment of the most appropriate initial response strategy for a suspected data exfiltration incident impacting a cloud-hosted electronic health record system, governed by HIPAA, considering the shared responsibility model and the need for forensically sound evidence preservation. Option A. Focus on deleting all potentially compromised data and reconfiguring security settings to prevent future incidents, assuming the data is irretrievably lost. Option B. Prioritize isolating affected systems to prevent further exfiltration, document all observed anomalies, and immediately engage the cloud service provider to understand their role and leverage their incident response capabilities for evidence collection. Option C. Immediately initiate a full forensic image of all affected cloud resources, engage external forensic specialists, and begin a comprehensive system restoration process to minimize downtime. Option D. Conduct an internal review of access logs and user activity without involving the cloud service provider, and only engage legal counsel after a preliminary assessment of the damage is complete. The correct answer is C. Immediately initiate a full forensic image of all affected cloud resources, engage external forensic specialists, and begin a comprehensive system restoration process to minimize downtime. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves a critical incident response within a cloud environment, where the shared responsibility model introduces complexity in determining accountability and the scope of forensic investigation. The incident's potential impact on sensitive customer data, coupled with the need to adhere to specific U.S. regulatory frameworks like HIPAA, necessitates a precise and legally compliant approach to evidence preservation and analysis. Missteps can lead to regulatory penalties, loss of customer trust, and legal liabilities. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes immediate containment and preservation of digital evidence in accordance with U.S. federal regulations and NIST guidelines, which are foundational for incident response in regulated industries. Specifically, it acknowledges the need to engage the cloud service provider, CSP, early to understand their role in the shared responsibility model and to leverage their tools and expertise for evidence collection without compromising the integrity of the data. This aligns with the principles of chain of custody and forensically sound practices, ensuring that any subsequent analysis is admissible and defensible. The focus on documenting all actions taken is crucial for compliance and auditability, particularly under HIPAA, which mandates robust security measures and breach notification protocols. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that focuses solely on immediate data deletion or system restoration without proper forensic preservation risks destroying critical evidence. This would be a direct violation of the principles of digital forensics and could hinder any subsequent investigation into the root cause, making it impossible to meet regulatory requirements for breach analysis and reporting under HIPAA. Furthermore, it could be interpreted as an attempt to conceal the incident, leading to severe legal and ethical repercussions. An approach that bypasses the cloud service provider and attempts to conduct a full forensic imaging of the cloud infrastructure independently is often technically infeasible and may violate the CSP's terms of service. This could also lead to an incomplete or compromised dataset, as the CSP controls the underlying infrastructure. From a compliance perspective, failing to involve the CSP when their infrastructure is implicated can lead to an incomplete incident response, potentially missing crucial evidence residing within the CSP's domain, and thus failing to meet the due diligence expected under U.S. regulations, an approach that delays engaging legal counsel and regulatory bodies until after the initial response is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. U.S. regulations, particularly those concerning data breaches like HIPAA, often have strict timelines for notification and reporting. Delaying legal consultation can lead to missteps in communication, inadequate breach assessment, and failure to meet mandatory reporting obligations, resulting in substantial fines and legal penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework that integrates legal and regulatory considerations from the outset. This involves 1. Understanding the regulatory landscape applicable to the data and systems involved, e.g., HIPAA for protected health information. 2. Clearly defining roles and responsibilities within the shared responsibility model of cloud environments. 3. Prioritizing evidence preservation using forensically sound methods, often in collaboration with the CSP. 4. Engaging legal counsel and relevant stakeholders, including regulatory bodies if necessary, early in the process to ensure compliance and proper guidance. 5. Documenting all actions meticulously for audit and legal purposes. Question 5. Comparative studies suggest that the effectiveness of security automation and orchestration in incident response is significantly influenced by the underlying risk assessment methodology. In the context of handling a data breach involving sensitive customer information, which of the following approaches best aligns with U.S. regulatory frameworks and professional incident handling best practices? Option A. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment to identify the types of sensitive data compromised, the potential impact on individuals and the organization, and the specific regulatory notification and reporting requirements before designing and implementing automated response workflows. Option B. Implementing off-the-shelf security orchestration tools that offer a wide range of automated actions, with the primary goal of reducing manual intervention time during an incident, without a detailed review of their compliance with specific data privacy regulations or their ability to generate legally defensible audit trails. Option C. Focusing automation efforts on the technical aspects of incident detection and initial containment, such as blocking malicious IP addresses, while deferring the assessment of data impact and regulatory notification obligations to a later stage of the incident response process. Option D. Prioritizing the development and deployment of automated playbooks that are designed to immediately contain the breach by isolating affected systems, regardless of the specific type of sensitive data involved or the potential for disruption to critical business operations. The correct answer is D. Prioritizing the development and deployment of automated playbooks that are designed to immediately contain the breach by isolating affected systems, regardless of the specific type of sensitive data involved or the potential for disruption to critical business operations. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for incident response efficiency with the long-term strategic goals of security posture improvement and regulatory compliance. The pressure to quickly contain a breach can lead to reactive automation that doesn't align with broader risk management objectives or established legal and regulatory frameworks. Careful judgment is required to ensure that automation efforts are not only technically sound, but also ethically responsible and legally defensible. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it integrates the risk assessment process directly into the design and implementation of security automation and orchestration. This ensures that automated responses are proportionate to the identified risks, align with the organization's risk appetite, and are developed with an understanding of potential legal and regulatory implications. By prioritizing risk assessment, organizations can ensure that automation enhances their ability to meet compliance obligations, such as those mandated by U.S. federal regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data or SOX for financial reporting, by providing auditable, consistent, and effective incident handling. This proactive approach minimizes the likelihood of introducing new vulnerabilities or failing to address existing ones in a compliant manner. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed without considering the nature of the data involved or the potential impact on sensitive information would be a significant regulatory failure. For instance, automating the deletion or alteration of evidence without proper legal counsel or adherence to data preservation requirements could violate regulations like the Stored Communications Act or rules of evidence in legal proceedings. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes the use of proprietary automation tools without evaluating their compliance with data privacy laws, e.g., CCPA in California, or their ability to generate auditable logs for regulatory reporting, would also be ethically and legally problematic. Such an approach risks non-compliance and potential penalties due to a lack of due diligence regarding data handling and reporting capabilities. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the incident's potential impact, considering both technical and business risks. This should be followed by an assessment of relevant legal and regulatory obligations. Automation and orchestration solutions should then be designed and implemented to directly address these identified risks and compliance requirements, rather than as an afterthought. Continuous evaluation and refinement of automated processes, informed by post-incident reviews and evolving threat landscapes, are crucial for maintaining an effective and compliant security posture. Question 6. The efficiency study reveals that a suspected data exfiltration incident has occurred within a microservices-based web application utilizing a distributed database. The incident handler must determine the most effective and compliant course of action to investigate and contain the threat while preserving critical evidence. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional incident handling best practices and regulatory expectations for evidence preservation? Option A. Focus solely on restoring the web application to its last known good configuration and redeploying it to production as quickly as possible. Option B. Immediately isolate the suspected compromised microservice and initiate a forensic image of its associated data store before proceeding with further analysis of logs and network traffic from the isolated environment. Option C. Restart all microservices in the cluster and clear all application and system logs to ensure a clean slate for the application to resume normal operations. Option D. Disconnect the entire web application from the network immediately without a detailed understanding of the microservice dependencies or the specific compromised components. The correct answer is B. Immediately isolate the suspected compromised microservice and initiate a forensic image of its associated data store before proceeding with further analysis of logs and network traffic from the isolated environment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an incident handler to balance immediate containment needs with the long-term integrity and legality of the incident response process. The web application's architecture, specifically its reliance on a microservices framework and a distributed database, introduces complexity in identifying the root cause and scope of a suspected data exfiltration. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to hasty decisions that compromise evidence or violate regulatory requirements. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and forensically sound methodology. By isolating the affected microservice and initiating a forensic image of its associated data store, the incident handler ensures that evidence is preserved in its original state. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics and incident response, which are implicitly governed by the need for accurate and admissible evidence in potential legal or regulatory proceedings. The subsequent analysis of logs and network traffic from the isolated environment allows for a thorough investigation without further contaminating the evidence or impacting production systems. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of overlooking critical evidence or making incorrect assumptions about the attack vector, thereby supporting a more effective remediation and preventing future incidents. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately restarting all microservices and clearing application logs. This is a critical regulatory and ethical failure because it constitutes spoliation of evidence. Clearing logs destroys vital information about the attacker's actions, the timeline of the incident, and the scope of the compromise. This action directly violates the principle of preserving evidence, which is fundamental to any investigation and can have severe legal repercussions, including fines and sanctions under regulations that mandate data breach notification and evidence preservation. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on restoring the web application to its last known good state without a thorough investigation. While service restoration is important, doing so without understanding the attack vector and the extent of data exfiltration is a significant ethical and professional lapse. This approach risks leaving backdoors open, allowing the attacker to re-enter or continue their malicious activities. It also fails to meet the regulatory obligation to understand the nature and impact of a data breach, which is crucial for proper reporting and mitigation. A third incorrect approach is to immediately disconnect the entire web application from the network without proper containment procedures. While isolation is a containment strategy, an indiscriminate shutdown without understanding the dependencies between microservices or the specific compromised components can lead to cascading failures and data loss. This can also hinder forensic analysis by disrupting the state of the systems. Professionally, this lacks the nuanced understanding of the application architecture required for effective incident response, and could be seen as an unprofessional overreaction that causes unnecessary disruption and potential data loss, which could have regulatory implications if sensitive data is compromised due to the handling. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes evidence preservation, systematic investigation, and adherence to established incident response methodologies. This involves 1. Assessment and triage, quickly understand the reported incident and its potential impact. 2. Containment, implement measures to limit the spread and impact of the incident, prioritizing methods that preserve evidence. 3. Investigation, conduct a thorough forensic analysis to determine the root cause, scope, and impact. 4. Eradication, remove the threat and any malicious artifacts. 5. Recovery, restore affected systems and services securely. 6. Lessons learned, document the incident, the response, and identify improvements for future prevention and response. This structured approach ensures that all critical aspects of incident handling are addressed, from immediate containment to long-term remediation and compliance. Question 7. To address the challenge of a suspected SQL injection vulnerability being actively exploited on a public-facing e-commerce website, leading to potential unauthorized access to customer payment information, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action for a GIAC certified incident handler operating under U.S. federal regulatory frameworks? Option A. Deploy a web application firewall (WAF) with updated rules to block the suspected SQL injection patterns and monitor traffic for any further malicious activity. Option B. Initiate a full system backup of the compromised web server and then proceed with patching the SQL injection vulnerability. Option C. Immediately isolate the affected web server from the network to prevent further data exfiltration and begin forensic analysis to determine the extent of the compromise and identify the specific data accessed. Option D. Immediately notify all affected customers and relevant regulatory bodies about the potential data breach. The correct answer is C. Immediately isolate the affected web server from the network to prevent further data exfiltration and begin forensic analysis to determine the extent of the compromise and identify the specific data accessed. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging due to the immediate need to contain a potential data breach originating from a web application vulnerability, while simultaneously ensuring compliance with U.S. federal regulations, specifically those pertaining to data privacy and incident response. The pressure to act quickly to mitigate damage must be balanced against the requirement for thorough investigation and accurate reporting. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes containment and eradication of the threat, followed by a systematic investigation to understand the scope and impact of the incident. This aligns with the principles of incident response frameworks, such as those outlined by NIST, which emphasize phases like preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery. Furthermore, by documenting all actions and evidence, it ensures that the organization can meet its legal and regulatory obligations for reporting and auditing, particularly under regulations like HIPAA, if health information is involved, or FTC guidelines concerning unfair or deceptive practices related to data security. The focus on preserving evidence is critical for potential legal proceedings or regulatory investigations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate patching without understanding the exploit vector or data exfiltration risks regulatory and ethical failures. Patching without investigation could leave backdoors open or fail to address the root cause, potentially leading to repeated incidents and a violation of the duty to protect sensitive data. Another incorrect approach that involves immediate public disclosure without a proper investigation and containment plan could violate notification requirements by providing incomplete or misleading information, potentially causing undue panic and reputational damage, and failing to meet the specific timelines and content requirements mandated by regulations like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, or state breach notification laws. An approach that delays reporting to regulatory bodies or affected individuals beyond statutory deadlines constitutes a clear regulatory failure and an ethical breach of trust. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a structured incident response plan that is regularly tested and updated. This plan should guide the incident handler through a series of logical steps, prioritizing actions based on risk and regulatory requirements. The handler must continuously assess the situation, gather information, and make informed decisions that balance technical remediation with legal and ethical obligations. Question 8. Stakeholder feedback indicates that a recent malware incident has significantly impacted endpoint security. To restore operations quickly, the incident response team is considering several approaches to resecure affected systems. Which approach best balances rapid recovery with long-term security posture improvement, adhering to U.S. regulatory expectations for incident response and system hardening? Option A. Focus solely on removing the detected malware from all affected systems, and then redeploy them into production without further configuration changes or vulnerability assessments. Option B. Implement a phased rollout of updated endpoint configurations that include enhanced security settings, stricter access controls, and application whitelisting, following thorough testing and validation to ensure operational stability. Option C. Immediately revert all affected endpoints to a previously known good configuration that predates the incident, without applying any new patches or security updates, to ensure a quick return to service. Option D. Expedite the recovery process by bypassing the endpoint hardening and configuration review for critical systems, prioritizing their immediate return to operational status. The correct answer is B. Implement a phased rollout of updated endpoint configurations that include enhanced security settings, stricter access controls, and application whitelisting, following thorough testing and validation to ensure operational stability. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing immediate operational needs with long-term security posture, all while adhering to specific regulatory mandates. The pressure to restore service quickly after an incident can lead to shortcuts that compromise endpoint security, creating a significant risk of reinfection or further compromise. Careful judgment is required to ensure that remediation efforts do not inadvertently weaken the organization's defenses. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, risk-based methodology aligned with established security frameworks and regulatory expectations. By focusing on identifying and mitigating vulnerabilities through controlled hardening and configuration changes, it directly addresses the root causes of the incident and strengthens the overall security posture. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and proactive risk management expected under U.S. regulatory frameworks, such as those enforced by NIST, which emphasize continuous monitoring and improvement of security controls. Implementing a phased rollout of hardened configurations, coupled with rigorous testing and validation, ensures that security enhancements do not disrupt critical business functions while effectively reducing the attack surface. An incorrect approach that involves immediately reverting to a known good, but unpatched, baseline configuration fails to address the underlying vulnerabilities that were exploited. This creates a significant regulatory and ethical failure by knowingly leaving systems exposed to known threats, violating the duty of care to protect sensitive data and systems. Such an action could be seen as a failure to implement reasonable security measures, potentially leading to penalties under regulations like HIPAA or PCI DSS if sensitive data is compromised. Another incorrect approach, which is to bypass endpoint hardening for critical systems to expedite recovery, represents a severe ethical and regulatory lapse. This prioritizes short-term convenience over long-term security, directly contravening the principle of least privilege and defense in depth. It exposes the organization to a high risk of repeat incidents and data breaches, which would be a clear violation of data protection laws and could result in substantial fines and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on removing the detected malware without assessing or addressing the system's configuration weaknesses, is insufficient. While it addresses the immediate symptom, it ignores the underlying vulnerability that allowed the malware to execute and spread. This reactive measure, without a proactive hardening strategy, demonstrates a lack of comprehensive incident response and risk management, potentially leading to future compromises and regulatory scrutiny for failing to implement adequate preventative controls. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured incident response plan that includes phases for containment, eradication, and recovery, followed by lessons learned and post-incident hardening. This process should be informed by a thorough risk assessment, considering the criticality of affected systems, the nature of the threat, and the relevant regulatory requirements. Prioritizing actions based on risk, implementing changes in a controlled manner, and validating their effectiveness are crucial steps in ensuring both rapid recovery and robust security. Question 9. Market research demonstrates that organizations often face significant pressure to restore services rapidly following a cyber incident. In such a high-stress environment, an incident response team discovers that the established incident response policy's containment procedures for a specific type of malware are outdated and would significantly delay recovery. The team is confident they can effectively contain and eradicate the threat using a more modern, albeit undocumented, approach they have researched. Which of the following actions best represents a professional and compliant response? Option A. Halt all recovery efforts until the incident response policy can be formally reviewed and updated by the appropriate stakeholders, even if this significantly extends the downtime. Option B. Immediately implement the researched, undocumented containment and eradication methods, prioritizing speed of recovery, and plan to update the policy retrospectively. Option C. Proceed with the undocumented containment and eradication methods, documenting all actions taken in detail, and immediately escalate the need to update the policy to management and the relevant compliance officers. Option D. Deviate from the policy to implement the researched methods, focusing solely on restoring services without documenting the deviation or the new methods, assuming the successful resolution will suffice. The correct answer is B. Immediately implement the researched, undocumented containment and eradication methods, prioritizing speed of recovery, and plan to update the policy retrospectively. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational continuity with the long-term implications of a poorly defined incident response policy. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise thoroughness and adherence to established procedures, potentially creating future vulnerabilities or regulatory noncompliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that immediate actions do not undermine the integrity of the incident response process or violate established legal and regulatory frameworks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to the established incident response policy and procedures, even under pressure. This ensures consistency, accountability, and a documented process that can be audited and reviewed. In the context of U.S. regulations, such as those mandated by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, frameworks like the Cybersecurity Framework and SB 800-61, a well-defined and followed incident response plan is crucial for demonstrating due diligence, mitigating damages, and meeting reporting requirements. Adhering to the policy ensures that all necessary steps are taken, including proper containment, eradication, recovery, and post-incident analysis, which are vital for compliance with regulations like HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, for healthcare organizations, or SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley Act, for publicly traded companies, both of which have implications for incident handling and data protection. An incorrect approach that bypasses established procedures to expedite recovery is professionally unacceptable. This failure to follow the incident response policy constitutes a regulatory failure, because it deviates from documented controls and best practices that are often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory bodies to ensure data security and business continuity. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of discipline and a disregard for the structured approach necessary for effective incident management, potentially leading to incomplete remediation and increased risk. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on restoring functionality without proper documentation or post-incident analysis is also professionally unacceptable. This represents a regulatory failure because it neglects the critical post-incident activities that are essential for identifying root causes, preventing recurrence, and fulfilling reporting obligations. Without thorough documentation and analysis, an organization cannot demonstrate to regulators that it has taken all reasonable steps to address the incident and improve its security posture. A third incorrect approach that involves making ad hoc decisions without consulting the incident response team or relevant stakeholders is professionally unacceptable. This is a regulatory failure as it undermines the collaborative and coordinated nature of incident response, which is a cornerstone of effective security practices and often a requirement for compliance. It can lead to conflicting actions, missed critical steps, and an inability to present a unified and defensible response to regulatory inquiries. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding and strict adherence to the organization's incident response policy. When faced with pressure, incident handlers must first confirm that their actions align with the documented procedures. If the policy is insufficient or unclear for the specific situation, the correct course of action is to escalate for clarification or amendment, rather than to deviate. This involves consulting with incident response leads, legal counsel, and relevant management to ensure that any deviations are authorized and documented. The focus should always be on a structured, repeatable, and defensible process that prioritizes both immediate resolution and long-term security and compliance. Question 10. The evaluation methodology shows that when a significant cyber incident impacts critical customer-facing services, the incident response team's primary focus is on isolating the affected systems and eradicating the threat. Which of the following approaches best integrates incident response with business continuity and disaster recovery to ensure minimal disruption and timely service restoration? Adhering to U.S. regulatory expectations for operational resilience. Option A. The incident response team attempts to restore services using available backups without consulting the business continuity plan or considering the defined recovery time objectives, prioritizing speed over adherence to established recovery protocols. Option B. The incident response team immediately initiates the predefined disaster recovery failover procedures for the affected services, leveraging documented recovery point objectives and recovery time objectives to restore functionality at an alternate site, while containment and eradication continue in parallel. Option C. The incident response team focuses exclusively on eradicating the threat and restoring systems to their original state, deferring any business continuity or disaster recovery planning until after the incident is fully resolved. Option D. The incident response team escalates the incident to the business continuity team, who then independently activate their disaster recovery plan without direct coordination or input from the incident response team regarding the nature and scope of the threat. The correct answer is B. The incident response team immediately initiates the predefined disaster recovery failover procedures for the affected services, leveraging documented recovery point objectives and recovery time objectives to restore functionality at an alternate site, while containment and eradication continue in parallel. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows that integrating business continuity and disaster recovery, BC/DR, into incident response is a critical, yet often complex, undertaking. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that the incident response plan, IRP, and the BC/DR plans are not siloed, but are harmonized to provide a seamless transition from incident containment and eradication to full operational recovery. This requires a deep understanding of how different types of incidents, e.g., cyber attacks, natural disasters, system failures, impact business operations, and how recovery objectives, recovery time objectives RTOs, recovery point objectives RPOs, align with incident response priorities. Careful judgment is required to balance the immediate needs of incident containment with the long-term goals of business resumption. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the alignment of incident response actions with predefined BC/DR strategies. This ensures that during a disruptive event, the incident response team can effectively leverage existing BC/DR capabilities, such as failover systems, data backups, and alternate work sites, to minimize downtime and data loss. This proactive integration is essential for meeting regulatory requirements that mandate the resilience and availability of critical business functions and data. For instance, in the U.S., regulations like HIPAA for healthcare or SOX for financial reporting, implicitly or explicitly, require organizations to demonstrate the ability to recover from disruptions, making a well-integrated BC/DR and incident response framework a compliance imperative. Ethical considerations also demand that organizations protect their stakeholders, including customers and employees, by ensuring minimal disruption to services. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on incident containment without considering the broader BC/DR implications would be professionally unacceptable. This failure could lead to prolonged downtime, significant financial losses, and reputational damage, potentially violating regulatory obligations to maintain service availability. For example, if an incident response team eradicates a threat but does not have a clear path to restore affected systems using pre-approved recovery procedures, it creates a gap in business continuity, which could be seen as a failure to meet due diligence standards. Another incorrect approach might involve implementing BC/DR measures that are not tested in conjunction with incident response scenarios. This disconnect means that while recovery capabilities may exist on paper, their effectiveness during a real incident remains unproven, leading to potential failures when they are most needed. This lack of validation can be a significant regulatory risk, as organizations may be unable to demonstrate that their recovery plans are viable. A third incorrect approach could be to treat BC/DR as a purely IT function, separate from business unit involvement. This isolation prevents the incident response team from understanding the true business impact of an incident and the specific recovery priorities of different departments. This can lead to misallocation of resources during a crisis and a failure to restore critical business functions in a timely manner, potentially contravening the spirit of regulations that emphasize business resilience. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the organization's critical business functions and their associated RTOS/RPOs. This understanding should then inform the development of both the IRP and the BC/DR plans, ensuring they are mutually supportive. Regular testing and tabletop exercises that simulate various incident scenarios, integrating both incident response and BC/DR actions, are crucial for validating the effectiveness of the combined plans. This iterative process of planning, testing, and refinement, guided by regulatory requirements and business objectives, forms the bedrock of effective incident management and business resilience. Question 11. Consider a scenario where a security alert indicates potential unauthorized access to a sensitive customer database. Network intrusion detection systems have flagged a significant volume of traffic originating from an internal server to an external IP address. You have captured several gigabytes of PCAP data from the network segment where the database resides. The primary objective is to quickly assess the risk and determine if sensitive data has been exfiltrated, while adhering to incident response best practices and potential regulatory reporting requirements. Which of the following approaches would be the most effective and professionally sound method for initiating your analysis of the PCAP data? Option A. Immediately filter the PCAP data to identify and analyze only the largest individual data transfers, assuming these are most likely to represent data exfiltration. Option B. Begin by decoding all network protocols within the PCAP files, prioritizing analysis of traffic patterns that deviate from established baselines and exhibit characteristics of data exfiltration or command and control communication. Option C. Examine all traffic that appears normal based on historical network baselines, looking for subtle anomalies that might indicate a stealthy attack. Option D. Focus exclusively on traffic flowing to and from the external IP address flagged by the IDS, as this is the most direct indicator of compromise. The correct answer is B. Begin by decoding all network protocols within the PCAP files, prioritizing analysis of traffic patterns that deviate from established baselines and exhibit characteristics of data exfiltration or command and control communication. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response: the need to quickly assess the scope and impact of a potential data breach while dealing with a large volume of network traffic data. The professional challenge lies in balancing the urgency of containment and eradication with the meticulous requirement for accurate evidence preservation and analysis, all within the constraints of potential regulatory scrutiny. The sheer volume of PCAP data can be overwhelming, making it difficult to identify critical indicators of compromise without a structured approach. The risk assessment component is crucial because it dictates the priority of response actions and the resources allocated, directly impacting the potential for further damage and regulatory noncompliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment driven by initial indicators within the PCAP data. This begins with identifying anomalous or suspicious traffic patterns that deviate from established baselines. Protocol decoding is then applied to understand the nature of these communications, looking for indicators of unauthorized access, data exfiltration, or command and control (C2) activity. This methodical process allows for the prioritization of analysis efforts on the most critical traffic, thereby enabling a more efficient and effective containment strategy. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that response actions are data-driven and proportionate to the identified risk, minimizing potential harm to the organization and its stakeholders. From a regulatory perspective, this approach supports the principle of due diligence in protecting sensitive data and responding promptly to security incidents, which is a cornerstone of many data protection frameworks. Incorrect approach is analysis. Focusing solely on the largest data transfers without initial protocol decoding is a flawed approach. While large transfers can be indicative of exfiltration, they could also be legitimate business operations. Without understanding the protocols and context, resources might be misdirected, delaying the identification of actual malicious activity. This could lead to a regulatory failure to adequately investigate and contain a breach, potentially violating data protection obligations. Analyzing only traffic to and from known malicious IP addresses, while a useful step, is insufficient on its own. Attackers often use novel or compromised infrastructure, meaning that focusing only on pre-identified threats might miss sophisticated attacks. This narrow focus risks overlooking critical indicators of compromise, leading to an incomplete incident assessment and potential regulatory noncompliance due to a failure to identify the full scope of the breach. Ignoring traffic that appears normal based on historical baselines is also problematic. Advanced persistent threats, APT, often blend in with legitimate traffic to evade detection. A thorough analysis requires scrutinizing deviations from normal, even subtle ones, and understanding the context of seemingly benign communications, as these could be part of a larger, stealthy attack. This oversight can result in a failure to detect a breach, leading to significant regulatory and ethical repercussions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach network traffic analysis for incident response with a risk-based methodology. This involves 1. Initial triage. Quickly review traffic for obvious anomalies or known indicators of compromise. 2. Protocol decoding and contextualization. Understand the nature of suspicious communication. 3. Risk prioritization. Focus analysis on traffic that poses the highest immediate risk to data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. 4. Correlation. Correlate network traffic findings with other incident data, logs, and point data for a comprehensive understanding. 5. Documentation. Meticulously document all findings and analysis steps for reporting and potential legal proceedings. This structured approach ensures that response efforts are efficient, effective, and defensible, meeting both technical and regulatory requirements. Question 12. The investigation demonstrates that following a suspected data breach, the incident response team needs to perform vulnerability scanning on affected systems to identify the root cause and potential attack vectors. Given the sensitive nature of the systems and the potential for data privacy violations, which of the following actions best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional incident handling best practices? Option A. Obtain explicit authorization from the designated security leadership and legal counsel. Clearly define the scope and methodology of the vulnerability scans, and ensure that scanning tools and techniques are configured to minimize data exposure and system impact, adhering strictly to the organization's established incident response and data handling policies. Option B. Focus vulnerability scanning efforts solely on publicly accessible systems and external-facing services, assuming internal systems are secure, and that internal scanning might inadvertently trigger intrusion detection systems or violate internal privacy policies without specific legal mandates. Option C. Initiate network-wide vulnerability scans using aggressive techniques to uncover any hidden backdoors or compromised accounts without prior notification to system owners, to ensure no potential entry points are missed during the critical initial response phase. Option D. Conduct comprehensive vulnerability scans across all identified affected systems, prioritizing speed of discovery over explicit system owner notification or detailed scope definition, to quickly identify and patch exploitable weaknesses. The correct answer is D. Conduct comprehensive vulnerability scans across all identified affected systems, prioritizing speed of discovery over explicit system owner notification or detailed scope definition, to quickly identify and patch exploitable weaknesses. Explanation: the investigation demonstrates a common challenge in incident response, balancing the need for rapid threat identification with the imperative to conduct thorough and legally compliant vulnerability scanning and assessment. The scenario is professionally challenging because the organization is under pressure to remediate identified weaknesses quickly to prevent further compromise, yet must ensure that the scanning activities themselves do not violate privacy regulations or introduce new risks. Careful judgment is required to select scanning methods that are both effective and compliant. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes authorized and controlled scanning activities. This aligns with the principles of responsible vulnerability management and incident handling. By obtaining explicit authorization and adhering to established scanning policies, incident responders ensure that their actions are within legal and ethical boundaries. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of unauthorized access or data exfiltration during the scanning process, which could lead to further legal complications or reputational damage. Furthermore, it ensures that the data gathered is admissible and reliable for subsequent remediation efforts. An incorrect approach that involves unauthorized scanning of systems outside the defined scope or without proper consent represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such actions could violate data privacy laws, such as those that govern the handling of personally identifiable information, PI, by potentially accessing or collecting sensitive data without a legal basis or user consent. This could lead to severe penalties, including fines and legal action. Ethically, it breaches the trust placed in the incident response team and the organization. Another incorrect approach, such as performing scans with overly aggressive or intrusive techniques without a clear justification or risk assessment, can inadvertently cause system instability or data corruption. This not only hinders the investigation, but also creates new security incidents, violating the duty of care to maintain system integrity. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adhere to best practices in vulnerability assessment, which emphasize minimizing impact. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's incident response plan, including its policies on vulnerability scanning and data handling. Incident responders must always seek explicit authorization before initiating any scanning activities, clearly defining the scope and objectives. A risk assessment should be conducted to evaluate the potential impact of the scanning methods chosen. Collaboration with legal and compliance teams is crucial to ensure adherence to all applicable regulations. Finally, maintaining detailed logs of all scanning activities, including authorization, scope, methods, and findings, is essential for accountability and potential legal defense. Question 13. Upon reviewing the disk image of a compromised server, an incident handler discovers that critical log files appear to have been intentionally deleted. The incident is ongoing, and the handler needs to recover this information as quickly as possible to understand the attacker's actions. The handler has access to forensic imaging tools and data carving utilities. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for rapid incident response with the requirement for forensically sound evidence collection and analysis? Option A. Inform the legal team about the deleted log files and wait for their explicit instructions before taking any further action, even if it delays the incident response. Option B. Immediately initiate data carving directly on the original compromised server's hard drive to recover deleted log files, prioritizing speed over creating a forensic image. Option C. Create a bit-for-bit forensic image of the compromised server's hard drive, and then perform data carving on the forensic image to recover deleted log files. Option D. Focus solely on recovering recently deleted files using standard file system undelete tools, as older or fragmented data is unlikely to be relevant to the current incident. The correct answer is B. Immediately initiate data carving directly on the original compromised server's hard drive to recover deleted log files, prioritizing speed over creating a forensic image. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical need to preserve the integrity of digital evidence while simultaneously attempting to recover potentially deleted or fragmented data. The incident handler must balance the investigative goals with the legal and ethical obligations to maintain a forensically sound chain of custody and avoid actions that could render evidence inadmissible. The urgency of an ongoing incident often creates pressure to quickly obtain information, which can lead to shortcuts that compromise the investigation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the preservation of the original evidence. By creating a bit-for-bit forensic image of the affected storage media, the incident handler ensures that the original data remains unaltered. Subsequent analysis is performed on the copy, safeguarding the integrity of the original evidence. This aligns with fundamental forensic principles and is implicitly supported by guidelines that emphasize evidence preservation and admissibility, such as those that would be considered in a U.S. legal context for digital evidence. The ability to recover deleted files through data carving on the forensic image is a standard and accepted technique for uncovering hidden or intentionally removed information, provided it is done on a copy. An incorrect approach that involves directly analyzing the live system or performing data carving on the original media without imaging is professionally unacceptable. This directly violates the principle of evidence preservation. In a U.S. legal context, such actions could lead to the evidence being challenged and deemed inadmissible in court because the integrity of the original data has been compromised. This failure to maintain a forensically sound process can be seen as an ethical lapse and a failure to meet professional standards, potentially jeopardizing the entire investigation and any subsequent legal proceedings. Another incorrect approach, such as only recovering recently deleted files without attempting to carve for older or fragmented data, is also problematic. While it might seem efficient, it limits the scope of the investigation and could miss crucial evidence, demonstrating a lack of thoroughness expected of an incident handler. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, prioritize the preservation of original evidence through imaging. Second, understand the specific goals of the investigation and the types of data that might be relevant, including deleted or fragmented files. Third, select appropriate forensic tools and techniques that are known to be reliable and forensically sound. Fourth, document all actions taken meticulously, including the tools used, their versions, and the steps performed. Finally, always consider the potential legal implications of the evidence collection and analysis process. Question 14. Quality control measures reveal that during a recent critical security incident involving a suspected ransomware attack on a financial services firm, the incident response team is debating the most effective method for system recovery. The primary goal is to restore business operations as quickly as possible while ensuring compliance with financial regulations and maintaining the integrity of any evidence related to the attack. Option A. Focus on isolating affected systems and manually rebuilding them from scratch using standard operating system images, bypassing backup restoration to avoid potential reinfection. Option B. Immediately initiate a full system restore from the most recent clean backups, prioritizing speed to minimize downtime, and document the restoration process. Option C. Conduct a thorough forensic imaging of all affected systems before any restoration, meticulously cataloging all logs and memory dumps, and then proceed with eradication and recovery based on forensic findings. Option D. Prioritize the immediate deletion of all potentially compromised data to prevent further spread, then restore systems from known good configurations without extensive forensic analysis. The correct answer is B. Immediately initiate a full system restore from the most recent clean backups, prioritizing speed to minimize downtime, and document the restoration process. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for incident containment and eradication with the long-term implications of data integrity and legal compliance. The pressure to quickly restore services can lead to hasty decisions that compromise evidence or violate regulatory mandates. The incident handler must navigate technical complexities while remaining acutely aware of the legal and ethical landscape. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes the preservation of forensic evidence, which is a cornerstone of effective incident response and a critical requirement under U.S. federal regulations such as HIPAA for protected health information and SOX for financial data. Maintaining the integrity of logs and system states is essential for accurate root cause analysis, attribution, and potential legal proceedings. This approach aligns with NIST SB 800-61 Rev. 2, which emphasizes evidence preservation throughout the incident response lifecycle. By documenting all actions and ensuring that remediation steps do not inadvertently destroy or alter critical evidence, the incident handler upholds both technical best practices and legal obligations. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that focuses solely on rapid system restoration without meticulous evidence preservation risks violating regulatory requirements. For instance, under HIPAA, any breach involving protected health information necessitates a thorough investigation and reporting process, which is impossible without intact evidence. Destroying or altering logs during restoration could be construed as obstruction of justice or a failure to comply with breach notification laws, leading to significant fines and reputational damage. An approach that prioritizes the immediate deletion of potentially compromised data without proper forensic imaging or analysis is also problematic. This action could be seen as an attempt to conceal the extent of the breach or to avoid regulatory scrutiny. It also prevents a comprehensive understanding of the attack vector and the full scope of affected systems, hindering future preventative measures and potentially leading to repeat incidents. Ethically, this approach fails to uphold the duty of care to protect sensitive information. An approach that involves restoring from backups without verifying the integrity of those backups or the restoration process itself can lead to reintroducing malware or vulnerabilities. This not only prolongs the incident, but also demonstrates a lack of due diligence, which can have severe legal and financial repercussions if the incident recurs or escalates due to this oversight. It also fails to meet the standard of care expected in incident handling. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework, such as the one outlined by NIST, which includes phases for preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication and recovery, and post-incident activity. Within each phase, the principle of evidence preservation must be paramount. Decision-making should be guided by a risk-based approach, considering the potential impact of the incident on the organization's operation, reputation, and legal standing. When faced with conflicting priorities, such as speed versus thoroughness, professionals must consult internal policies, legal counsel, and relevant regulatory guidance to make informed decisions that minimize risk and ensure compliance. Documentation of all decisions and actions is crucial for accountability and post-incident review. Question 15. Examination of the data shows a surge in security alerts across multiple network segments, including indicators of potential unauthorized access attempts on critical servers and unusual data exfiltration, patterns from a sensitive customer database. The Security Operations Center, SOC team, is experiencing a high volume of alerts, making it challenging to determine the immediate priority for investigation and response. Which approach best ensures effective incident handling and minimizes potential organizational harm? Option A. Focus solely on the volume of alerts, dedicating resources to addressing the highest number of individual alerts first, regardless of their potential impact. Option B. Rely exclusively on automated alert thresholds to trigger investigations and escalations, without human oversight or contextual analysis. Option C. Immediately escalate all alerts to senior management for their review and decision-making on how to proceed with investigations. Option D. Conduct a rapid, structured impact assessment for each alert, prioritizing investigations based on the potential severity of the threat to critical assets, sensitive data, and business operations. The correct answer is D. Conduct a rapid, structured impact assessment for each alert, prioritizing investigations based on the potential severity of the threat to critical assets, sensitive data, and business operations. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in security operations centers, SOC, where the volume and nature of alerts require rapid and accurate impact assessment to prioritize response efforts. The professional challenge lies in balancing the urgency of potential threats with the need for thoroughness, ensuring that critical incidents are not overlooked due to resource constraints or misjudgment. Effective impact assessment is crucial for maintaining operational resilience and compliance with regulatory expectations for timely incident response. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it systematically evaluates the potential harm to the organization's assets, operations, and reputation. This aligns with the principles of risk management and incident response frameworks, which mandate prioritizing actions based on the severity of the potential impact. In the context of U.S. regulations, such as those enforced by agencies like CISA or implied by frameworks like NIST SB 800-61, Computer Security Incident Handling Guide, a structured impact assessment is fundamental to demonstrating due diligence in protecting sensitive information and critical infrastructure. It ensures that resources are allocated efficiently to mitigate the most significant threats, thereby fulfilling the organization's responsibility to protect its stakeholders and comply with data breach notification requirements if applicable. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the volume of alerts without considering their potential impact is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a misallocation of resources, where minor or false positive alerts consume valuable analyst time, delaying the investigation of genuine, high-impact incidents. This failure to prioritize effectively could result in significant financial losses, reputational damage, and regulatory penalties for non-compliance with incident response mandates. Another incorrect approach that involves immediately escalating all alerts to senior management without initial triage and impact assessment is also professionally unsound. Transparency is important. Overwhelming senior leadership with every alert can lead to alert fatigue, hindering their ability to focus on truly critical issues. This approach fails to leverage the expertise within the SOC to filter and contextualize alerts, leading to inefficient communication and potentially delaying decisive action on high-priority incidents. A third incorrect approach that relies on automated, predefined thresholds for escalation without human review or contextual understanding can be equally problematic. While automation is vital for efficiency, rigid, unthinking automation can miss nuanced threats or misinterpret legitimate system activities as malicious. This can lead to either missed incidents or excessive false positives, both of which undermine the effectiveness of the SOC and its ability to protect the organization. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stage approach. Initial alert triage to filter out obvious noise, followed by a rapid impact assessment that considers the affected systems, data sensitivity, potential for lateral movement, and business criticality. This assessment should inform the prioritization of further investigation and escalation. Continuous training and refinement of these assessment criteria, informed by threat intelligence and organizational risk appetite, are essential for maintaining an effective and responsive SOC. Question 16. Performance analysis shows a critical alert from the EDR tool indicating potential ransomware activity on a user workstation. The EDR tool's automated remediation feature is configured to immediately isolate the endpoint and quarantine suspicious files. However, the incident response team is aware that this specific EDR tool's quarantine function can sometimes corrupt or delete files, making forensic recovery difficult. The team also knows that a full disk image of the affected workstation would take several hours to complete, and the ransomware is suspected to be actively encrypting data. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the incident response team? Option A. Ignore the EDR alert for now, as the tool's limitations might lead to data loss, and wait for a more advanced forensic tool to arrive on site. Option B. Allow the EDR tool to execute its automated remediation, including quarantining suspicious files, to quickly contain the threat and then proceed with forensic analysis. Option C. Manually isolate the affected endpoint from the network using host-based firewall rules and immediately initiate a forensic disk image of the workstation before any automated EDR actions are taken. Option D. Immediately wipe, the affected workstation to ensure no further encryption or lateral movement occurs, and then rebuild the system. The correct answer is C. Manually isolate the affected endpoint from the network using host-based firewall rules and immediately initiate a forensic disk image of the workstation before any automated EDR actions are taken. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, balancing the need for rapid containment with the requirement for thorough evidence preservation and adherence to established protocols. The pressure to quickly mitigate a potential data breach, coupled with the limitations of a specific EDR tool, creates a complex decision-making environment. Professionals must navigate the technical capabilities of their tools against the legal and regulatory obligations to maintain data integrity and ensure a defensible incident response. The challenge lies in making a judgment call that minimizes immediate risk without compromising future investigative or legal efforts. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of forensic integrity while still attempting to contain the threat. This aligns with best practices in incident response, which emphasize a methodical approach that includes evidence collection and analysis before irreversible actions are taken. By initiating a targeted network isolation of the affected endpoint, the incident handler can limit the spread of the malware without immediately wiping the endpoint, which would destroy valuable forensic data. This allows for subsequent analysis of the endpoint's state, memory, and disk to understand the attack vector, scope, and impact. This approach is crucial for meeting regulatory requirements such as those under the U.S. framework, which often mandate timely notification and a thorough understanding of the breach's scope and the types of data affected. Preserving evidence is paramount for demonstrating due diligence and compliance with data breach notification laws. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping the affected endpoint. This action, while seemingly decisive in containing the threat, constitutes a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It destroys critical forensic evidence that could be required for regulatory investigations, legal proceedings, or even internal post-incident analysis to improve defenses. Under U.S. regulations, such as those pertaining to data breaches, the ability to accurately report on the nature and scope of the breach is essential. Wiping the endpoint prevents this, potentially leading to noncompliance and penalties. Another incorrect approach is to solely rely on the EDR tool's automated remediation without deeper investigation. While EDR tools are powerful, their automated actions might not always be precise or might overlook subtle indicators of compromise. Over-reliance without human oversight can lead to incomplete containment or the accidental destruction of evidence. This could violate the principle of acting with reasonable care and diligence, which is often an implicit or explicit requirement in regulatory frameworks. A third incorrect approach is to ignore the EDR alert due to perceived tool limitations and wait for a more comprehensive solution. This represents a failure to act in a timely manner, which is a critical component of incident response under most regulatory regimes. Delaying action can allow a threat to propagate, increasing the scope of the breach and the potential for data exfiltration. This inaction can lead to significant legal and reputational damage and potentially violate breach notification timelines. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased approach to incident response, beginning with identification and initial containment that preserves evidence. This involves understanding the capabilities and limitations of deployed tools, such as EDR, and knowing when to escalate or employ manual techniques. The decision-making process should be guided by a framework that prioritizes evidence preservation, regulatory compliance, and effective threat mitigation. This includes documenting all actions taken, the rationale behind them, and the observed outcomes. When faced with tool limitations, the professional should consider workarounds or supplementary tools that do not compromise the integrity of the investigation. The ultimate goal is to achieve a balance between rapid response and a thorough, defensible incident investigation. Question 17. Compliance review shows that the incident response team is exploring the implementation of advanced automation tools to streamline the handling of security alerts. Which of the following approaches best aligns with best practices for incident response automation, while adhering to regulatory expectations for effective security operations? Option A. Prioritize automation solutions that offer the most significant cost savings, even if they require extensive customization or have limited validation, as the primary goal is to reduce the overall budget allocated to incident response. Option B. Deploy a comprehensive suite of off-the-shelf automation tools immediately across all incident response workflows to maximize efficiency gains and reduce operational costs, assuming the vendor's claims of effectiveness are sufficient. Option C. Implement a phased approach, starting with automating low-risk, high-volume tasks such as initial alert triage and enrichment, with rigorous testing and validation of each automation module before expanding to more complex processes, ensuring human oversight remains for critical decision points. Option D. Automate all alert analysis and decision-making processes, including containment and eradication action, without human intervention to ensure the fastest possible response times, regardless of the complexity or potential impact of the incident. The correct answer is C. Implement a phased approach, starting with automating low-risk, high-volume tasks such as initial alert triage and enrichment, with rigorous testing and validation of each automation module before expanding to more complex processes, ensuring human oversight remains for critical decision points. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, balancing the speed and efficiency gains of automation with the need for accuracy, compliance, and human oversight. The professional challenge lies in identifying the optimal level of automation that enhances response capabilities without introducing unacceptable risks or violating regulatory mandates. Careful judgment is required to select automation strategies that align with organizational policies and legal obligations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased, risk-based implementation of automation. This involves thorough testing, validation, and continuous monitoring. By starting with low-risk, high-volume tasks and gradually increasing automation as confidence grows, organizations can minimize the potential for errors that could lead to data breaches, regulatory violations, or operational disruption. This approach aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible technology adoption, ensuring that automation serves to augment, not compromise, incident response effectiveness and compliance. An incorrect approach that relies solely on off-the-shelf, unvalidated automation tools without a robust testing and validation framework poses significant regulatory and ethical risks. Such an approach could lead to automated actions that are inappropriate for the specific incident, potentially causing more harm than good, such as inadvertently deleting critical evidence or misclassifying a minor event as a major one, leading to misallocation of resources. This failure to exercise due diligence in selecting and implementing automation tools can result in non-compliance with data protection regulations that mandate appropriate security measures and incident response capabilities. Another incorrect approach that involves automating critical decision-making processes without human review or override mechanisms is ethically problematic and legally risky. Incident response often involves nuanced judgments that require human understanding of context, intent, and potential impact, which current automation may not fully grasp. Automating these decisions without human oversight can lead to incorrect actions that violate privacy laws, fail to meet reporting obligations, or damage the organization's reputation. This demonstrates a lack of responsible stewardship over sensitive data and incident handling processes. A further incorrect approach that focuses on automation solely for cost reduction without considering its impact on response effectiveness or compliance is professionally unsound. While efficiency is a benefit, it should not come at the expense of accurate detection, containment, eradication, and recovery. Regulatory frameworks often require that incident response capabilities are effective and proportionate to the risks faced by the organization. Prioritizing cost over effectiveness can lead to a situation where automated responses are insufficient to address sophisticated threats, resulting in prolonged breaches and greater damage, which can have significant legal and financial repercussions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment of potential automation solutions. This includes evaluating the maturity of the automation technology, its potential impact on different stages of the incident response lifecycle, and its alignment with existing regulatory requirements and organizational policies. A phased implementation strategy, starting with pilot programs and rigorous testing, is crucial. Continuous monitoring and periodic reevaluation of automated processes are also essential to ensure ongoing effectiveness and compliance. Furthermore, maintaining clear lines of human accountability and oversight for automated actions is paramount. Question 18. Analysis of a critical security incident involving a suspected data exfiltration of sensitive customer information requires immediate action. The incident handler has confirmed initial indicators of compromise and is working to contain the threat. According to established incident response protocols, which of the following actions best aligns with the communication and escalation requirements for a U.S.-based organization operating under relevant data protection regulations? Option A. Immediately notify the organization's legal counsel and executive leadership team, providing them with a preliminary assessment of the incident and the ongoing containment efforts, as per the Incident Response Plan's escalation matrix. Option B. Continue technical containment and analysis for at least 24 hours to gather all possible technical details before initiating any internal or external notifications. Option C. Focus solely on technical remediation and wait for a formal request from management before providing any incident details. Option D. Disseminate a general alert about a potential security issue across all company-wide internal communication platforms to inform all employees. Correct answer is A. Immediately notify the organization's legal counsel and executive leadership team, providing them with a preliminary assessment of the incident and the ongoing containment efforts, as per the Incident Response Plan's escalation matrix. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an incident handler to balance the immediate need for information gathering and containment with the critical requirement of timely and accurate communication to relevant stakeholders, all while adhering to specific regulatory mandates. The pressure to act quickly can lead to overlooking established protocols, potentially exacerbating the incident's impact or leading to regulatory noncompliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to established communication and escalation protocols, which are often mandated by regulatory frameworks designed to ensure transparency, accountability, and timely response to security incidents. In the U.S. context, frameworks like NIST SB 800-61, Rev. 2 Computer Security Incident Handling Guide, and potentially sector-specific regulations, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare, PCI DSS for payment card industry, emphasize the importance of defined communication channels and escalation paths. By following these, the incident handler ensures that information flows to the appropriate individuals or entities, e.g., legal, executive leadership, regulatory bodies if applicable, within defined timeframes, enabling informed decision-making and mitigating further risks. This structured communication prevents information silos, reduces the likelihood of miscommunication, and ensures that the incident is managed at the appropriate organizational level. An incorrect approach that involves delaying notification to internal legal counsel or senior management until the technical containment is fully complete is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a significant regulatory and ethical lapse. Regulations often have explicit reporting timelines that begin from the moment an incident is detected or suspected, not after all technical remediation is finished. Delaying notification can lead to missed reporting deadlines, resulting in fines and penalties under various U.S. laws and regulations. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of due diligence and can be seen as an attempt to manage the narrative, rather than ensuring transparent and timely stakeholder awareness, which is crucial for organizational reputation and trust. Another incorrect approach, such as immediately broadcasting details of the incident across public social media channels without proper authorization or verification, is also professionally unacceptable. This violates principles of controlled communication and can lead to panic, misinformation, and exploitation by adversaries. It bypasses established communication protocols, potentially alerting attackers to the investigation's progress and compromising evidence. From a regulatory standpoint, unauthorized public disclosure can violate data breach notification laws, which typically require notification to affected individuals and regulatory bodies through specific channels, not public forums. It also risks violating confidentiality agreements and corporate policies. A third incorrect approach, which is to only communicate with the IT security team and not escalate to management or other relevant departments, fails to recognize the broader business impact of an incident. Incidents can have legal, financial, and reputational consequences that extend far beyond the technical realm. Failing to escalate prevents senior leadership from understanding the full scope of the risk and making strategic decisions regarding resource allocation, public relations, and potential legal liabilities. This oversight can lead to inadequate response efforts and significant organizational harm, and may also contravene regulatory requirements for executive awareness and oversight of security incidents. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's incident response plan, including its communication and escalation matrix. This plan should be developed in alignment with relevant regulatory requirements. Upon detection of an incident, the incident handler should immediately consult this plan to identify the required notifications, reporting timelines, and communication channels. A risk-based assessment should then be performed to determine the severity and potential impact of the incident, which will inform the urgency and scope of communication. Prioritizing adherence to the established plan, even under pressure, ensures a structured, compliant, and effective response. Question 19. The performance metrics show a significant increase in data exfiltration attempts detected by the security team, with preliminary analysis indicating that sensitive customer information may have been accessed. Which of the following actions best represents a legally and ethically sound initial response to this situation, adhering to U.S. regulatory frameworks? Option A. Delay all public statements and notifications until a complete forensic analysis is finalized, regardless of the potential for ongoing data loss. Option B. Immediately issue a public statement acknowledging a potential data breach and detailing the types of information that might have been compromised, while initiating a full forensic investigation. Option C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to determine if a breach of unsecured protected information has occurred. Consult with legal counsel regarding notification obligations and initiate containment and remediation efforts. Option D. Focus solely on technical containment of the threat, deferring any legal or ethical considerations until the incident is fully resolved. The correct answer is B. Immediately issue a public statement acknowledging a potential data breach and detailing the types of information that might have been compromised, while initiating a full forensic investigation. Explanation. The performance metrics show a significant increase in data exfiltration attempts detected by the security team. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an incident handler to balance the immediate need to contain the threat with the legal and ethical obligations surrounding data privacy and notification. The incident handler must navigate a complex web of regulations, ensuring that actions taken during the incident response do not inadvertently violate these requirements. Careful judgment is required to determine the scope of the breach, the types of data involved, and the specific notification obligations, all while under the pressure of an active incident. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough and legally compliant investigation before making any public disclosures or taking irreversible actions. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible incident handling. Specifically, in the context of U.S. regulations such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for protected health information, or the various state data breach notification laws, a covered entity or business associate must first determine if a breach of unsecured protected health information has occurred. This involves a risk assessment to ascertain the likelihood that the information has been compromised. Only after this assessment, and if a breach is confirmed, are notification requirements triggered. This methodical approach ensures that notifications are made accurately and to the appropriate parties, minimizing unnecessary panic and reputational damage while fulfilling legal mandates. It also respects the privacy rights of individuals whose data may have been affected. An incorrect approach that involves immediate public disclosure without a proper investigation is professionally unacceptable. This action would likely violate U.S. data breach notification laws, which typically require specific content and timelines for notifications, and often mandate an assessment of the breach's impact. Premature disclosure could lead to regulatory penalties for failing to follow proper procedures, and could also cause undue alarm among customers or stakeholders, potentially leading to reputational damage that is worse than the breach itself. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay any notification or remediation efforts until a full forensic analysis is complete, even if preliminary evidence suggests a significant breach, is also professionally unacceptable. While thoroughness is important, U.S. regulations often have strict timelines for notification once a breach is known or reasonably suspected. Unnecessary delays can result in fines and legal liabilities for failing to meet these statutory deadlines. Furthermore, delaying containment and remediation could allow the threat actor to cause further damage or exfiltrate more data, exacerbating the incident. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured incident response plan that includes clear steps for legal and ethical considerations. This plan should outline procedures for identifying the nature and scope of the incident, assessing the types of data potentially compromised, consulting with legal counsel to understand specific notification obligations under relevant U.S. federal and state laws, conducting a risk assessment to determine if a reportable breach has occurred, and executing timely and compliant notifications if necessary. Prioritizing communication with legal and compliance teams early in the incident response is crucial for navigating these complex requirements effectively. Question 20. Stakeholder feedback indicates that current incident response reporting is perceived as a collection of raw data points rather than a driver for process improvement. To optimize the incident response process and provide more value, which of the following approaches to security metrics and reporting would be most effective? Option A. Present raw logs and system event data to stakeholders without any aggregation, analysis, or contextualization. Option B. Increase the frequency of reporting on the total number of security alerts generated, regardless of their severity or impact, to demonstrate the volume of activity. Option C. Focus on collecting metrics that are easily quantifiable and require minimal effort to gather, such as the number of security tools deployed. Option D. Implement metrics that measure the effectiveness of incident containment and eradication. Track the time to resolve incidents against defined service-level objectives, and report on the root causes of recurring incidents to inform preventative measures. Correct answer is D. Implement metrics that measure the effectiveness of incident containment and eradication. Track the time to resolve incidents against defined service-level objectives, and report on the root causes of recurring incidents to inform preventative measures. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the need for actionable security metrics with the diverse reporting requirements and understanding of various stakeholders, including executive leadership, technical teams, and potentially regulatory bodies. The pressure to demonstrate value and compliance through reporting, while also optimizing the incident response process, necessitates a strategic approach to metrics selection and communication. Careful judgment is required to ensure that metrics are not only measurable, but also meaningful and directly contribute to improving incident handling efficiency and effectiveness. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the core of process optimization by focusing on metrics that provide actionable insights into incident response performance. By identifying bottlenecks, measuring response times against defined objectives, and tracking the effectiveness of remediation efforts, the incident response team can make data-driven decisions to improve their processes. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement and demonstrates a commitment to operational excellence, which is implicitly expected in any professional security role. Furthermore, reporting on these metrics to stakeholders in a clear and concise manner fosters transparency and builds trust, enabling better resource allocation and strategic planning. This approach also supports compliance by providing evidence of diligent incident management. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the volume of incidents without context fails to provide actionable insights. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it misrepresents the true state of security posture and can lead to misinformed decisions. It does not demonstrate a commitment to improving incident response capabilities, which could be a violation of due diligence expectations. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes metrics solely for their ease of collection, regardless of their relevance to incident response optimization, is also professionally unacceptable. This represents a failure to meet the needs of stakeholders who require meaningful data to understand and improve security operations. Ethically, it is a disservice to the organization to present data that does not contribute to effective risk management. An approach that involves reporting raw, unanalyzed data without interpretation or context is a failure in professional responsibility. It places an undue burden on stakeholders to derive meaning and can lead to misinterpretations, potentially causing panic or complacency. This lack of analytical rigor can be seen as a failure to uphold professional standards of communication and reporting. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the incident response lifecycle and the objectives of the incident response program. It requires engaging with stakeholders to understand their information needs and the specific challenges they face. Metrics should be selected based on their ability to measure progress towards these objectives and identify areas for improvement. The data collected should then be analyzed and presented in a way that is easily understandable and actionable for the intended audience, emphasizing trends, root causes, and recommended improvements. This iterative process of measurement, analysis, and action is fundamental to effective security operations and process optimization.